Breaking news, legendary professional wrestler Hulk Hogan has died.
Long before the world knew him as Hulk Hogan, the larger-than-life icon of professional wrestling, Terry Gene Bollea had dreams that looked nothing like the squared circle. Born on August 11, 1953, in Augusta, Georgia, and raised in Tampa, Florida, Hogan grew up with a passion for sports and music. Standing tall even as a teenager, young Terry was an imposing figure, which naturally led him toward athletics. Baseball, in particular, was his first love. Many don't know this, but he showed tremendous promise as a pitcher, reportedly throwing fastballs that touched impressive speeds for his age. Scouts even eyed him as a potential professional prospect. However, fate had other plans. At the same time, Bollea was a gifted musician. His love for music briefly considered pursuing music as a full-time career. In fact, his dedication to the guitar was so intense that for a time, the idea of becoming a famous musician seemed more realistic than stepping into a wrestling ring. For years, he lived the life of a struggling artist, lugging his gear to small gigs and hoping for that big break. Little did he know, his real stage would not be a dimly lit bar, but an arena packed with tens of thousands of screaming fans. The first steps into wrestling, 1977. The turning point came when Terry, who already had an athletic frame, caught the attention of wrestling trainer Hiro Matsuda. Matsuda was a Japanese wrestler with a reputation for being incredibly tough on newcomers. According to wrestling lore, Matsuda wanted to test Bollea's commitment, so during an early training session, he broke Terry's leg, intentionally. Instead of quitting, Terry returned after healing, proving his determination to make it in the business. That grit earned Matsuda's respect, and Terry's wrestling journey began. In 1977, Terry Bollea officially debuted in the world of professional wrestling, competing in local Florida circuits. At this time, he was still experimenting with ring names and personas, trying to find what would resonate with the audience. His massive size, 6 feet 7 inches and over 300 pounds, quickly made him stand out. He had the physical presence to dominate, but wrestling in the late 1970s was a tough business. It wasn't glamorous yet, the sport was still deeply rooted in regional territories, far from the pop culture explosion it would become in the 1980s. The birth of Hulk Hogan. Everything changed when Terry adopted the name Hulk Hogan, a move that forever altered the trajectory of his life. The name came from an unlikely source. During a television appearance promoting wrestling, Hogan sat next to Lou Ferrigno, the star of the Incredible Hulk TV series. Hogan dwarfed Ferrigno in size, leading to comparisons with the Green Marvel superhero. Vince McMahon Sr., who ran the World Wrestling Federation, WWF, at the time, loved the association and suggested the name Hulk Hogan. Hogan's Irish-sounding surname was part of a WWF strategy to appeal to different ethnic fanbases. The name clicked, and the persona began to form, an all-American powerhouse with charisma and unmatched physical presence. But Hogan was not yet a global superstar. That moment was still to come. Hulkamania takes over, 1980s. In the early 1980s, professional wrestling was on the verge of a revolution. Vince McMahon Jr., who had taken control of WWF from his father, had a bold vision: take wrestling national, then global, and merge it with mainstream entertainment. McMahon needed a face for this new era, a figure larger than life, someone who could appeal to kids, families, and casual fans, not just hardcore wrestling enthusiasts. Enter Hulk Hogan. With his 24-inch pythons, as he famously called his biceps, flowing blonde hair, and booming charisma, Hogan was everything McMahon wanted. Hogan's message was simple yet powerful: train, say your prayers, and eat your vitamins. He embodied the ideals of heroism, strength, and positivity, values that resonated with a generation of fans. In 1984, Hulk Hogan defeated the Iron Sheik at Madison Square Garden to win his first WWF World Heavyweight Championship. This wasn't just a title change, it was a cultural shift. Hogan's victory symbolized America triumphing over foreign villains during a time when Cold War tensions still loomed. From that moment, Hulkamania was born, and it spread like wildfire. The 1980s wrestling boom. What followed was nothing short of a pop culture phenomenon. Hogan became the centerpiece of WWF's expansion. The 1980s everywhere, posters, action figures, lunchboxes, you name it. He even had his own cartoon series, Hulk Hogan's Rock and Wrestling, which aired on CBS. Hogan's mainstream appeal also extended to commercials and public appearances. He famously starred in a TV spot for Right Guard deodorant and even did promotions where the tagline was, "Be a Hulkamaniac." The message was clear: Hogan wasn't just a wrestler, he was a role model for millions of kids worldwide. Perhaps the peak of this era was WrestleMania, an event created by Vince McMahon in 1985 that fused wrestling with celebrity entertainment. The inaugural WrestleMania featured Hogan teaming up with Mr. T, and it was a massive success. Hogan headlined multiple WrestleManias afterward, turning each event into a spectacle that combined athletic drama with Hollywood flair. Beyond wrestling, Hogan in movies and TV. Hogan's stardom wasn't confined to wrestling rings. Hollywood soon came calling. He starred in movies such as Rocky III, 1982, where he played the intimidating wrestler, Thunderlips, opposite Sylvester Stallone. The cameo introduced Hogan to a global film audience and boosted his crossover appeal. Later, he headlined family-friendly movies like Suburban Commando and Mr. Nanny, which, while not critical darlings, cemented his status as a household name. Television was another avenue for Hogan's fame. He appeared on talk shows, commercials, and even had his own reality series decades later, Hogan Knows Best, proving that his star power transcended wrestling. Hogan on the cover of Sports Illustrated. Hulkamania's influence was so massive that it shattered barriers previously thought impossible for pro wrestlers. In 1985, Hulk Hogan became the first professional wrestler ever to appear on the cover of Sports Illustrated. This was a watershed moment. It validated wrestling as more than a sideshow attraction. Hogan wasn't just a wrestling star. He was a mainstream sports icon on par with the biggest names in football, basketball, and boxing. The WCW era and reinvention, 1990s. By the mid-1990s, the wrestling landscape began to change. The WWF, while still popular, faced stiff competition from Ted Turner's World Championship Wrestling, WCW. In a shocking move, Hogan jumped ship in 1994, signing with WCW in what was then one of the most talked about moments in wrestling history. Initially, Hogan remained the All-American hero, but by 1996, fans were growing tired of the squeaky clean image. That summer, at WCW's Bash at the Beach, Hogan did the unthinkable. He turned heel, villain, and formed the New World Order, NWO, with Kevin Nash and Scott Hall. The NWO storyline revolutionized wrestling, ushering in the edgier, Attitude Era. Hogan, now calling himself Hollywood Hogan, embraced a darker persona complete with black attire, spray-painted championship belts, and unapologetic arrogance. This reinvention not only revitalized his career but also helped WCW dominate the wrestling ratings for years. Scandals, controversies, and personal struggles. Hogan's life outside the ring, however, was far from perfect. In the early 1990s, he admitted to using anabolic steroids during his career, an admission that sparked widespread debate about drug use in wrestling. Later, in the 2000s, Hogan became embroiled in one of the most sensational celebrity scandals of the decade, the release of an unauthorized sex tape. The tape led to a legal battle that culminated in Hogan suing Gawker Media for invasion of privacy, ultimately winning a $140 million judgment, a case that made global headlines and bankrupted the media company. Hogan also faced personal struggles, including a highly publicized divorce and financial troubles. Despite these challenges, he remained a polarizing but undeniably influential figure in popular culture. Legacy of Hulkamania. Today, Hulk Hogan's impact on professional wrestling and entertainment cannot be overstated. He helped transform wrestling from a regional curiosity into a global phenomenon, paving the way for future superstars like The Rock, Stone Cold Steve Austin, and John Cena. Hogan's charisma, catchphrases, and unforgettable matches turned wrestling into an event that captured mainstream attention. Even with the scandals and controversies, Hogan's name remains synonymous with wrestling's golden era. His life story is a testament to the highs and lows of fame, a journey that took him from small rock clubs in Florida to the bright lights of Madison Square Garden, from the hero of millions to a complex figure grappling with the consequences of stardom. Hulk Hogan, the larger-than-life legend who defined an era. When we talk about professional wrestling, few names echo as loudly across the corridors of sports entertainment history as Hulk Hogan. A WWE Hall of Famer, a cultural icon, and one of the most charismatic figures ever to step inside the squared circle, Hogan's story is a fascinating blend of glory, controversy, redemption, and enduring influence. In 2014, after years of absence and speculation, Hulk Hogan made a highly anticipated return to WWE. Fans across the world erupted with nostalgia as the man who defined wrestling's golden age once again stood beneath the bright lights, hosting WrestleMania 30, one of the most significant events in WWE history. That same year, Hogan also celebrated his 61st birthday, a milestone that reminded fans of just how long this larger-than-life personality had been part of their lives. But to truly understand the weight of that moment, we need to take a step back and look at the legacy that made Hogan one of the most recognizable names in pop culture. The early days, from Terry Bollea to Hulk Hogan. Long before Hulkamania ran wild, the man behind the persona, Terry Gene Bollea, was a Florida-born kid with big dreams. Standing at an imposing 6 feet 7 inches with a physique that turned heads, Bollea initially pursued a career in music. Few fans know that before dominating the wrestling world, he was the bass guitarist for a band called Ruckus, performing in small venues around Tampa. But fate had other plans. It was during one of these performances that Hulk's towering presence caught the attention of wrestling legends like Jack and Gerald Briscoe, who saw potential in the young musician. After some convincing, Bollea traded his guitar for a pair of wrestling boots. By 1977, he was training under Hiro Matsuda, a man known for breaking bones to test his students' commitment. Hulk's leg was snapped on his first day of training, a harsh initiation that might have ended the journey for many. But not Hogan. He came back, stronger and more determined than ever. The birth of Hulkamania. Hogan's rise wasn't overnight. He bounced around various wrestling territories before joining Vince McMahon Sr.'s World Wrestling Federation, WWF, in 1979. However, his first stint was short-lived after he accepted a role in the movie Rocky III, where he played the iconic character Thunder Lips opposite Sylvester Stallone. That appearance catapulted Hogan into mainstream visibility, setting the stage for his eventual transformation into a global superstar. By the early 1980s, Vince McMahon Jr. envisioned taking wrestling from smoky arenas to primetime television. For that dream, he needed a superhero, a larger-than-life figure who could captivate audiences of all ages. Enter Hulk Hogan. With his blonde handlebar mustache, 24-inch pythons, and catchphrases like, "Say your prayers and eat your vitamins," Hogan became the perfect embodiment of McMahon's vision. His charismatic promos, electrifying entrances to the sound of Real American, and undeniable physical presence created a phenomenon known as Hulkamania. It wasn't just wrestling, it was a movement. WrestleMania and the global explosion. The year 1985 marked a turning point. Hogan defeated the Iron Sheik at Madison Square Garden, winning his first WWF championship. That victory wasn't just about a title, it symbolized a new era. Wrestling was no longer just a niche attraction, it was entering the mainstream, fueled by Hulkamania. When WrestleMania I debuted that same year, Hogan was front and center. Teaming with Mr. T in the main event, Hogan helped deliver an entertainment spectacle that combined celebrities, athleticism, and drama. From that point on, Hogan wasn't just a wrestler, he was a pop culture icon, appearing in cartoons, movies, and countless endorsements. Throughout the late 80s, Hogan's popularity reached astronomical levels. He headlined multiple WrestleManias, faced off against legendary rivals like Andre the Giant, and even body-slammed the 520-pound giant in front of 93,000. What made Hulk Hogan so special? It wasn't just his size or strength, it was the character, the persona, and the connection he forged with fans. Hogan represented the quintessential American hero, a beacon of positivity during the Reagan era, preaching hard work, loyalty, and honor. Television appearances on shows like The A-Team, music albums, and even Saturday morning cartoons cemented Hogan's crossover appeal. He became a household name, standing shoulder to shoulder with Hollywood's biggest stars. For kids growing up in the 1980s, Hogan was more than a wrestler, he was a role model, an action figure come to life. The shocking heel turn and NWO era. By the mid-1990s, however, the Hulkamania train began to slow. Wrestling audiences were evolving, craving edgier content. Hogan's red and yellow superhero persona started to feel outdated. In 1996, Hogan made a career-defining decision that shocked the world, he turned heel. Joining Scott Hall and Kevin Nash in WCW, Hogan formed the New World Order, NWO, a rebellious faction that blurred the lines between fiction and reality. Gone was the all-American hero, in his place stood Hollywood Hogan, clad in black and white, spouting arrogance and disdain for the fans who once adored him. This move revitalized Hogan's career and helped WCW dominate WWE in the famous Monday Night Wars. Return to WWE and Hall of Fame induction. Eventually, Hogan returned to WWE in 2002, engaging in unforgettable feuds and moments, including a legendary clash with The Rock at WrestleMania X8, where two generations collided in an electric atmosphere. The match ended with the Toronto crowd erupting in chants for Hogan, proving that even as a villain, his star power was undeniable. In 2005, Hogan was inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame, solidifying his status as one of the greatest to ever lace up a pair of boots. It was a celebration of a career that had shaped the wrestling industry and influenced countless performers. Final thoughts. As NBC News' Mark Barb once eloquently stated in his broadcast, colorful and charismatic, Hulk Hogan will be remembered as a larger-than-life personality and pop culture icon. Those words are more than just a tribute, they capture the very essence of a man who didn't just compete in wrestling rings but transformed them into grand stages of drama, energy, and excitement. Hulk Hogan was not simply a wrestler, he was an experience, a phenomenon, and for many, the beating heart of professional wrestling during its golden era. Before Hulkamania swept across the globe, Hogan was just Terry Bollea, a young man with big dreams and a passion for music and sports. Born in Augusta, Georgia, and raised in Tampa, Florida, Hogan originally pursued a career in music as a bass guitarist. But fate had other plans. His towering physique and undeniable charisma eventually led him into the world of professional wrestling. In 1977, he stepped into the ring for the first time, and by the early 1980s, the world would know the name Hulk Hogan. What set Hogan apart wasn't just his size or strength, it was his ability to connect with fans on an emotional level. When Hogan pointed to the crowd, cupped his ear to listen to their cheers, and tore his yellow shirt apart, it wasn't just a gimmick, it was magic. He represented hope, strength, and the idea that good would always triumph over evil. For millions of kids in the 1980s, Hulk Hogan wasn't just a wrestler, he was a real-life superhero. Hogan's rise coincided with Vince McMahon's bold vision to take the World Wrestling Federation, WWF, national. Together, they turned professional wrestling into mainstream entertainment. Hogan headlined the very first WrestleMania in 1985, teaming up with Mr. T in a match that blended sports and pop culture like never before. With every title win and every epic showdown, whether against Andre the Giant at WrestleMania 3 or Randy Savage at WrestleMania V, Hogan solidified his place as wrestling's ultimate icon. But Hogan's impact went beyond the squared circle. He became a cultural force, a movie star, a TV personality, and even a Saturday morning cartoon character. Catchphrases like, "What you gonna do when Hulkamania runs wild on you," became part of everyday conversation. He embodied the 1980s spirit of excess, energy, and optimism. Today, as we look back on Hulk Hogan's journey, from a young dreamer in Florida to the face of a global phenomenon, we realize that his legacy isn't measured solely in championship belts or pay-per-view buys. It lives on in the memories of fans who tore their t-shirts in their bedrooms, flexed their imaginary 24-inch pythons, and believed, even for a moment, in the unstoppable power of Hulkamania. Hulk Hogan didn't just change professional wrestling, he redefined what it meant to be a superstar. And decades later, the echoes of his music, his words, and his aura still resonate. Because Hulkamania will never truly die.